All right, welcome everybody. Welcome back to the show Beyond the Claim, where my name is Vince Perri. I am your longtime public adjuster and entrepreneur, and now coach, business acquisition leader here in the space. And I'm very excited because we've gotten broad on this show, and that's why it's called Beyond the Claim. I am not just a public adjuster anymore. I am very well into and experienced with entrepreneurship and owning businesses and scaling businesses. And now I just want to broaden my audience. I want to broaden my audience to a point where we could just bring in all types of different people of business and entrepreneurship that can help other business owners and business leaders as well. And today, I'm very excited because we have a very special guest that I have been going back and forth with for I don't know how long now, for probably several months here. We've got Milli Fox on the show. She is no BS manifestation coach. Her company is Milli Fox. She is a manifestation and identity coach. And for those of you who watch my show, know that I love manifestation. I'm a huge Joe Dispenza fan. I'm a huge fan of Bob Proctor, which if you guys do not know who these people are, you have to know. Millie, I'm going to tell you right now, before I even introduce you, I had 3 months where I was reading a Joe Dispenza book and listening to Bob Proctor on what is it called, on how to be rich, or knowing that you're rich or something like that at the same time. And it was like
Okay.
3 months of just like I was like on cloud nine. It was like amazing.
So good. Yeah.
So good. So Billy, before we get into it, please tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Yeah. My whole thing is that I want to rebrand manifestation a little bit. That's where I'm coming from. I love manifestation, but I feel the way that it's presented, The Secret was fun and everything, but it just doesn't feel like something really tangible and meaty. And that's my claim to it, is that I want to bring it into people's lives in a way that they can feel like it's not just some woo-woo stuff. You know what I mean? That it's something that's really backed by science, that it's something that is going to move the needle. It's not just, positive thinking, even though positive psychology obviously has a lot of research behind it. I feel there's just still a lot of stigma around manifestation and what it really means.
You're so right because I told my friends that I was like, getting into it and I was trying to manifest my reality and my future. I went through a really hard time, end of
Mhm.
2023, 2024, where I legit
Okay.
almost went bankrupt.
Oh
I
my.
had to go see a therapist because I just
Yeah.
couldn't figure stuff out. So I got into it a lot. Obviously, Dan Martell and his coaching program helped me a lot as well. And I got into the manifestation a lot. And I'm like sharing it with my friends. And I'm like telling them that I'll like put on my headphones and I'll like listen to like those sound waves, like those gigahertz waves
Yeah.
of just like they have a ton of them like for 5 hours on YouTube, and I
Yes.
would just sort of fall asleep to it. And man, the amount that they made fun of me because of it. Look at all that woo-woo stuff and what are you trying to do?
Right.
So you're so right. And then even in an interview that I had recently, if you got a chance to watch it, you should watch it. I interviewed Shane Dozier. He's a contractor coach, but the first 20 minutes of our interview is all about Bob Proctor and manifestation
Nice.
and stuff like that. And he kept referring it to woo-woo stuff and woo-woo stuff and woo-woo stuff and stuff like that. And I even stopped him at one point. I'm like, who cares? But you're so right.
Yeah.
It does have like a negative connotation where you're just like
Yeah.
kind of like a witch or something.
Yeah, I actually met a woman at the elite social selling summit, and she said woo just means window of opportunity. And I was like, that is so good. I never heard anyone say that before, and I was like, I'm gonna remember that. I'm gonna use that one because it's so true. And yeah, okay. There's so many things across history, if we look at it, that have been, people have rolled their eyes at for a long time until we understood why it was beneficial or how it worked, what was the science behind it. And I think we're going through that now with manifestation, where it's starting to come out more and more that this stuff works on a brain-based level. So whether you think it's like woo-woo or, whatever, it doesn't matter because it works. It works.
Okay.
We're
Tell me, tell,
reprogramming the brain.
all right. So tell me how.
Well, we're embedding things into our subconscious mind, right? I'm sure many of us have seen a diagram of or a photo or, whatever of an iceberg. And we know that the tip of the iceberg is our conscious mind, and the bottom of the iceberg is our subconscious and unconscious mind. And that is what's running our show, right? We can't possibly process all of the bits of information that we're receiving through our senses at every second of our existence. So we need something to do with it, right? We need to be able to delete, distort, and filter all of that information. And our subconscious does the majority of that work, right? And it's habitual because it would take way too much energy. First of all, our brain uses the most amount of energy in our body, right? It's a crazy supercomputer that's, eating up all of our energy all of the time. So it has to find the most efficient ways to do things. And to make it simple, our subconscious mind is like, it's almost like a thermostat, right? We set it to a certain temperature, and then our subconscious goes to keep it at that equilibrium. And that's what our set point is. That's our status quo. That's our life. That's our existence. Those are the filters that we view and lenses that we view absolutely everything through. So, therefore, those are the decisions we make. Those are the behaviors that we automatically, do. And so, if we can change the subconscious programming, the filters, we can reprogram the body. Also, it's not just the brain, right? It's the whole nervous system, and work on having a better relationship with our heart as well, too, because I don't want to leave the heart out of it. There's actually more signals that come from the heart to the brain than there are from the brain to the heart, which is really fascinating. So we're embedding things into our subconscious mind. We're rewiring the way that our subconscious operates and views the world around us. And I'm sure you've heard, the way we see our reality creates our reality, right? And with that, if we can change the filters and the lenses that we're viewing reality through, our reality will change. And that's just simple facts, right? You can have two people sitting beside each other and they're seeing everything happening completely differently. They're interpreting every action that they're watching somebody else, every word that they're hearing, they're interpreting it completely differently. One person might be offended and get defensive, and the other person may be completely neutral, right?
Well, you mentioned one thing. I like how you said that the brain creates the most energy in your body. And what I learned through Joe Dispenza and several of his books is that we're all made up of energy. So
Yeah,
because we're all made up of energy, you could literally, and your brain has and stores the most energy, you could literally move your energy in whichever direction that you want if you
for
focus on
sure.
something strong enough and for a long enough time. Where we're all made up of atoms, we're all made up of these molecules, and they're all filled up of what, like 99.9% of it is energy. And
It
they've
is,
done tests under a microscope where you could actually, it'll move in its own direction without you like doing much of anything. So what I love how he describes, and I'm not a biologist or a scientist or anything like that. So if you got to read one of his books to like really see the
for
actual
sure.
scientific, that I think was my favorite part of it, because for those that think that it's woo woo are those that people that don't understand the actual science behind it.
Exactly. And it can be like your energy field can be measured, right? Like your heart resonance. Joe Dispenza talks about your heart resonance and then your brain heart coherence when they're operating in alignment with what you feel and what you think are in coherence. And it's insane how you can measure this like aura, which
Yep.
people think is woo-woo, right? But
Right.
it's a legitimate thing and you can feel it when you are beside someone who's in a bad mood. Even if they have a neutral face and they're not saying a word, you can feel it, right?
I love how you also said like that basically you were talking about just one's perception. One's perception of how they look at life and how they look at things is just like everyone has their own perception. And if you're in a negative state and you are just thinking all of these negative things and you're doubting yourself and you think that you're not capable enough, then everything that comes around you and everything that is in front of you and everything that you see is just going to be this
Yeah.
negativity, and you're not going to be worth it. And you're not going to be able to do it. And I noticed little things that I tell my team. I'm just like, if you put this into practice and you really try to focus on these amazing capabilities and these amazing qualities that you actually do have, you just have to literally, so, have to literally convince your subconscious of it. Little things start happening. Like, and I always compare it to like, you get more green lights. when you're
For
driving.
sure.
You get
Yeah.
more happier, positive conversations with people.
Yes.
You start sleeping better. And like just overall, if not for anything, if it is not a fact that you could actually attract your own reality, at the very least, you just live such a nice, better life. It's a little
Yeah.
that much more positive.
Absolutely. And what's the harm in that? No, you're right. And it's what we focus on expands, right? And a huge piece of all of this that I stress a lot is self-trust. And that's something that not a lot of people talk about. They talk about confidence, right? And all these other like self-esteem, all these other constructs, but self-trust really is the foundation of all of those different things. And the way I see it is that when we build trust in ourselves, we also simultaneously increase our trust in the universe and our ability to have faith and hope. So that's what I love about being in Dan's community, Dan Martell's community, is that he stresses this self-trust piece. He doesn't say that, but with the daily non-negotiables, and the showing up and doing the things and doing the work. I call it devotional discipline because you're devoted to a greater cause. Because the word discipline can feel crunchy to people, can feel like self-punitive or whatever it is. But when we look at it through like sacred preparation and devotional discipline, it's like, oh, this is part of my mission. This is part of my cause. This is why I'm doing these things, even if I don't feel like it, even if I'm not in the mood to it, I'm tired to do it, I'm tired, etc. We have to do those things because when we do it, we prove to ourselves that we are reliable. We prove to ourselves that we are capable, and consistency compounds, right?
Mhm.
Consistency actually, to me, compounds magic. And that's a big one because people just think they're supposed to sit back and wait for the thing to be like dropped in their lap, or a magic man in the sky with a wand is granting them their manifestations if they're in alignment. And I'm like, that's where I find it's nonsense.
But I also find it that when you get in that state and you start to think about all these amazing things, it puts you in such an energetic state anyway, where
Yes.
you actually want to get out and start doing things and you become more disciplined and you become more driven and you become more hardworking
Yes.
and you are all in on every single thing that you're doing.
Yeah, that's why all of it compounds, right?
I just
Exactly.
I just think it's funny. There is one common trend of like every freaking zillionaire. It's like Dan Martell, Jim Rohn, Tony Robbins, Eric Thomas, Les Brown, like all these very, very wealthy freaking people.
Success
They all
inspiring.
follow the same rules, man.
Yes, success leaves clues, doesn't it?
I mean, it's all the same, no offense, but it's all the same crap. It's all like the same. They all go back to believing in yourself and thinking that you can do it. And like I had in my video, in not only sensing it and not only desiring some of your most craziest, wildest dreams, but also expecting it and living in it on a day-to-day basis. It's all the same. They all preach the same thing. So there must be something to it because let me tell you, they're
Yes.
all freaking wealthy and extremely
Yeah.
successful.
Yeah, the one thing that I wanted to point out there, what you said about the green lights thing. So, when we are in this state of positivity, we're feeding our mind with good things, we're focusing on gratitude, we're being curious instead of shutting down, is that we actually almost expand our field of perception. Okay. Because when we are shut down and just say our nervous system is dysregulated and whatnot, we actually don't have the same capacity mentally to tap into those states of abundance, of gratitude, etc. And when we are in that state, our field of perception almost expands because it's almost like we've taken our blinders off, right? When we're shut down, we're so focused on why we can't, what's in the way, what's the matter. We have this tunnel vision that limits the possibility that's in front of us. And when we remove all of that and we get into curiosity, we get into gratitude, and we get into possibility, we start to notice more opportunities. Our creativity actually becomes unlocked. We have more access to flow states. We can connect deeper with other people. And then when you create those emotional connections, obviously you're going to have better outcomes from your networking and all of that stuff, right? Like the How to Win Friends and Influence People, if you've read that book more than once. There's all of these little pieces that come simply from those habits, right? And it's expanding the field of perception so that you actually can see, oh, look, there's 10 green lights ahead of me. Whereas if you're looking down, you're only looking at the next light. Oh, this one's red.
Or you're just in your own head.
Exactly. Exactly. With blinders on.
So, Millie, how'd you get into this? What's your story?
Oh, you know what? My
What
dad
was
introduced me
what,
to manifestation.
I was actually gonna say, what was your low? What was your low
Oh,
moment?
yeah, I'll get to that for sure. So growing up, both of my parents were into spirituality, but their life didn't reflect it. Let's just put it that way. So my dad introduced me to like Norman Vincent Peale and Abraham Hicks, and my favorite book is Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. Such a good one. It was the first book that ever kind of put into words my beliefs about something like greater than us, which was a great one. And at the same time, my mom was suffering really deeply from severe depression and other mental health issues and substance abuse issues and all this. So my childhood was very chaotic, very, very chaotic, watching my mother going through all of that. And the two of them, they parted when I was 8 years old. And it was around that time that I just knew something was deeply wrong with all of this. And I promised myself at that time, I told myself I wanted to become a psychologist because I wanted to help people figure out their problems and live better lives. And I stayed true to that, actually. My whole life, that was my North Star of I don't want anyone else to suffer this way because my mom was a beautiful woman. She was a creative woman. She was very hardworking. And I just watched the light get sucked out of her till unfortunately, eventually she passed away a couple of years ago at this point. And I never want that to happen to anyone else, basically. And the way that I came into manifestation was I actually did do my psych degree. I was on the track, to get into psychotherapy or become a psychologist. And it just felt so far removed from lived experience. It felt too textbook for me. So I kind of took a different route. I finished school and I was like, what am I going to do? Didn't know. Got into actually the wellness world, personal training, nutrition, and that was so new to me because I did not value my body prior to that. I was all about the brain. I was smart in school, so I only valued that. And then I started to realize, oh, these pieces go together. The gym makes me feel really mentally well. And I started to put all these pieces together. I started to revisit the aspects of spirituality that my dad had kind of introduced to me. And I started to put all these pieces together. And I realized at a certain point that manifestation was this umbrella that covered every single thing that I was so passionate about. And I started to create my own approach to it that brought in things that people who teach manifestation don't generally bring in. Like I bring in a lot of Brene Brown's work into my manifestation teachings. I bring in Dr. Kristen Neff's work, Byron Katie's work. Dr. Kristen Neff is a researcher on compassion. She has mindful self-compassion course and practice, which is so incredible for manifestation because a lot of people don't understand compassion very well. They just think it's like being nice to yourself and kind of like letting yourself off the hook, but there's so much more to it. So anyways, it brought me back around to manifestation that I had learned of in my younger years, and basically I made it my own. And that's been my mission. That will continue to be my mission, to make it something that people can use in their day-to-day life. I call it Manifest OS because it's your operating system. It should be the way you just do life, manifesting on autopilot. It's the way you live.
So tell me about what you have quoted as the vision board life.
Vision board life is what aligns with your identity and your values and what makes you excited to wake up every day, fills your cup, fills your soul. And that could be different for everybody, right? It's whatever you want to dream, whatever you can dream, you can do. And it doesn't necessarily have to be so focused on prosperity, which that can be an outcome for sure, byproduct. But I kind of use this term prosperity porn when it comes to manifestation because I feel like that's the huge focus is like manifest a Lambo and a mansion and the private jet and cool, cool, cool. But why? Why do you want those things? If your why and it aligns with your heart, then fabulous. But I think people the desire, skip ahead to the desire without understanding all of the pieces that need to lead up to the formation of the desire first. So there's this really awesome guy. His name is James R. Doty. He's actually a neurosurgeon. And he wrote a book recently called Magic Mind or Mind Magic. I always swap the name up wrong. And he talks about how he got everything he wanted. He was on the verge of buying an island. He had several mansions. He had every car he could possibly want. And then he lost it all in the dot-com crash. And he was taught manifestation as a child by this woman in a magic shop. It's a really cool story, actually. And the thing that she told him was before you manifest anything, you have to open your heart. And that was the step as a 12-year-old kid when he was learning this. He was like, oh, why? I don't know what that's all about. Whatever. I'm just going to get everything I want. I want multi-millions. I want this. I want that. And so he got it all. He felt completely empty, lost his marriage, had a bad relationship with his daughter, and then he went back to all those teachings that he still had a notebook where he had written everything down that he learned from her because he came from a really terrible childhood as well. You know, his dad was an alcoholic in and out of jail, his mom was depressed in bed, and this experience with this woman was really pivotal for him in his life. And then he realized that was the step that he had skipped, opening his heart before manifesting and making sure that everything was aligned with him, his values, his deepest core soul-led, desires.
I'm like trying to find I'm creating a leadership and mindset course
Awesome.
for public adjusters. And I'm trying to find the notes where I put basically if you have like your goals and the stuff that you want to accomplish, and you definitely have to ask why. I'm trying to just find it if I could find it. I can't find I will find it, but you have to ask why. Like you have this that you want to accomplish, and it could be $1 million, it could be a Lambo, it could be whatever it is. But like you said, is if you could just find the why as to what it's going to do, and then if you could find how it's also going to help others around you, others in your family, like Dan
Yes.
says, desire what you want to acquire for others.
Hmm.
To me, that is like that's the thing right there. Where when you start knowing that you're not totally selfish and I can't think of the word where all it is just money for
Or,
yourself.
yeah.
Like for me, it's like, yeah, okay, I want a private jet. Sure, that's great. So that I can take my family to create some of the most amazing experiences that we'll be able to talk about for the rest of our lives. Or I want to build this freaking sick outdoor kitchen so that every single party that we have with friends and family is at my house so that we can create some awesome and killer memories for everyone else. Where when you start thinking about everyone around you, it goes
Yeah.
next level and it makes you desire it more and it makes you actually go get after it even more.
It inspires you when you're not feeling it, right? It reminds you to get back up, which is humongous. And I always say you're not in charge of the how and when, but you are in charge of the what and why.
I like that. I like that. You have something here that says, and it comes up a couple of times in my notes about regulating your nervous system.
Mhm.
Could you please tell me more and explain that?
Right. So this is your wiring. Okay. So it's really based on it's safety. Okay. So if we look at what your nervous system like there's something called a window of tolerance. Okay. So this is like your safe zone, your green zone that you can stay inside of to be able to access, like I was mentioning before, creativity, abundance, gratitude, being able to see opportunities to feel capable, to have motivation, all of the good things that we need to keep on track towards our goals. And if you are dysregulated, you're going to get pushed out either into like anxiety and overwhelm, where you begin to lose capacity, or you're going to go into like what's called dorsal vagal shutdown. Okay. So then you're just
What is
like
that? Say that again. Dorsal what?
dorsal vagal shutdown. Okay.
Okay.
So that's where, do I have a little thing here?
You caught me by surprise with that one.
I used to have a little let me see if I have it. No, I don't have it. I used to have a diagram of this where it showed the three different sort of states. But basically, if you are coming from a background of trauma, or you've been through something, you have chronic stress, your window of tolerance actually shrinks. Okay, because then you become what's called hypervigilant. So hypervigilance is where you're constantly searching your environment for a threat because you're wired for that, for survival, right? So this was something that I learned about myself because I had such a chaotic childhood. I was very hyper vigilant and very chronically stressed and tense at all times and very defensive as well. My attitude was defensive because I was always feeling attacked by whatever anybody would say. And so when you figure this out and you know what supports regulation, it's not like, okay, you've done the work, you're regulated, now you're good, right? It's an ongoing thing, just like your body staying fit and keeping your muscles healthy and any other part of or system of your body. So regulating your nervous system is making sure that your wiring can support the rest of the programs you want to run. Okay. If we want to go back to like computer analogies and operating systems and all of that stuff, if your wiring is frayed, just say your iPhone cable is frayed, it's going to stop working eventually, right? Like, how are you going to charge up and get that energy that you need if you're working with frayed wiring? Okay. You're always going to be on in a reactive mode rather than being able to respond. So, if you want to be able to access your heart, and your creative brain and all of that stuff, we need to figure out how to change our lifestyle, maybe, or include some practices in our day to day that support regulation and increase our window of tolerance so that we're not knocked out emotionally, energetically, actually, also physically as easily.
For me, I get scatterbrain. I call it scatterbrain, where
Mm-hmm.
it's very difficult for me to make decisions, or I get just like overwhelmed with just like my operating system it just starts to malfunction because there's
Yeah,
just like too much going on.
glitching. You're glitching.
And I know now the feeling. I know,
Yeah.
like I could feel it. Like I've been in a really good place for the past year, but it still happens every once in a while where I'm just like,
Yeah.
whoa, whoa, okay, like just stop.
Mm-hmm.
Stop, take a break, chill out. That's what I get. I get like scatterbrain. That's what happens to me.
For sure. Yeah. And I feel that too. I'm ADHD, so I need to support myself because then I'm just like, pew, pew, pew.
It was funny, actually, just before our interview here, I had like 10 minutes and I went through all the notes and I got your free guide that you have. I got that over the weekend. I read that already. And I was like, you know what? Chill. I
Yeah.
went to the kitchen, got me a cup of coffee, relaxed. I was gonna call somebody. I was like, no, I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna relax.
Yeah.
I
Just
think
like,
as entrepreneurs, we don't do that enough. We are constantly just like, what's the next thing that I
what
can
can I
do?
do? What can I do? What can I
What
do?
can I do? It's not even like what I have to do or what do I need to do. It's like, what can I do? I need to do something. I need to be productive. I need to do this and that. And sometimes it's okay to just chill out and just do nothing. Right? I mean, even like the mindless habit of scrolling through social media, I think it depends on who you follow and stuff like that. Like, I think that's a
Mhm.
good little break too. If it's a couple of minutes, just like get away from work a little bit and just like, open a book and just chill out for a little bit. For me, it's like as soon as it hits pretty much like 5 o'clock, like, dude, I'm done, done, no more. I'm
Good. Good. Yeah. And a lot of people don't know how to shut off. And even on the weekends, they're overscheduling themselves. I did that this weekend. I was like, I'm saying no to all the plans
hmm
this weekend. I'm having an unstructured weekend and it felt so good and
Mhm.
so rejuvenating. I didn't sit around at home all weekend, but I just did what I wanted to do. I went on a long walk, I went to the mall. I was just whatever.
And we were talking about stress, which is interesting because I was recently going through a very stressful time with my mom. She's got vascular dementia. She's
Oh, I'm
pretty she's
sorry.
pretty progressed. About 5 weeks ago, she had to go into the hospital because she had pneumonia, and she was in the hospital for 3 days. Everything turned out fine. They gave her the antibiotics. Pneumonia went away, but when she came out of the hospital, like the dementia just took a huge dip
Mm.
where, I was afraid that she would leave the apartment. She didn't recognize the apartment where she was at. She thought she was in Miami. She didn't know that she was here. She didn't know what this house was. And like, it was like, when that happens, you have to worry about them opening the door and like walking away. So she had to have 24/7 care. So for like 4 or 5 weeks, it was either me like sleeping over the house to make sure everything was okay at night. It was seeing her every single day while trying to run two businesses, while having a 3-year old, while having a life,
Oh my
having to
goodness.
try to find nurses. So I was at a very, very high stress level. And it makes you think about that people have to think about the internal stress that they're going through because
Mm,
I told my wife, I was like, man, this is annoying because I eat great. I work out every day. I'm very healthy. I'm very fit, but I'm going to die of stress.
hmm
And if we
Yeah.
don't, if we, and I was just using that as an example because I was going through a stressful time where I could just feel like the stress, like just there. And then again, through social media, I saw something, some podcast interview or something like that, where the lady was just like, it doesn't matter how much you work out. It doesn't matter how many vegetables you eat. If you are just overly stressed inside of your brain and you're getting that scatterbrain and all that stuff is happening inside, that will cause cancer. That will cause Oh, excuse me. That will cause dementia. That will cause whatever kind of diseases that are lingering there if you are just overly just mentally stressed. And it's like we have to be self-conscious of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's really about how you structure your life first and foremost, right? It's not saying to avoid stress, but it's to have those checks and balances in there. And the other things you do, exercise is great, absolutely great for stress, right? But then there's other things too. It's like, what type of exercise are you doing? Are you doing any exercise that's like down regulating once in a while, maybe a deload or some yoga or walking is really great for reducing cortisol. Incredible. Walking in nature, 10x that, right? Being in nature, period. Putting your feet on the grass, also incredible for your nervous system. Being in community, like co-regulating with other people, really, really good for you. So making sure you have these other pieces of connection, of, with nature, it's connection to something greater than you as well, which is really powerful. So those are like the big three is community, nature, and exercise. And then there's also all sorts of other things that you can do, like breath work, meditation, scheduling downtime on purpose, scheduling like gray zones, right? Where you just have unstructured time. And yeah, I think delegation is probably another huge one for entrepreneurs and women, wives, whatever, just like the mental load, trying to, deflate that bubble a little bit for yourself. All of these things in general, like we don't think about them intentionally enough. We kind of just go with whatever's thrown at us, but it's about structuring your life in a specific way.
I want to get into the how, that's for sure, because that's obviously what people really want to know. But I also want to get into this story you have about Amanda. I'd like for you to get into that because that looks like a really cool success story that I'd like to hear about.
Yeah, for sure. Amanda's been a long time client of mine. We actually met when we were doing a different manifestation program together. What I had found through doing a variety of other manifestation programs was that they put a lot of pressure on people to think positive all the time because that is part of the how, okay? Part of the how is to embed an intention into your subconscious, right? And then think positive thoughts and visualize it with positive emotions and be in an energetic match to it, right? But what happened and what happens, and a lot of people come to me saying that they almost have PTSD from trying to manifest too hard.
Really?
Because they're being like hyper vigilant about their own thoughts. Anytime they have a negative thought, they're shaming themselves. They're trying to speak in these really hyper vigilant ways to avoid any kind of negativity coming out of their mouth. So I've seen this a lot with women. It's perfectionism rearing its ugly head. And so when Amanda came to me, she was in this space of like high levels of perfectionism around her dreams and her manifestations. And my big specialty is helping just eliminate that like completely. And a lot of entrepreneurs are highly perfectionist, right? Yeah. So we can get obsessive about our goals, right? And that all creates resistance. And I always say resistance is the killer of all manifestation. Full stop. Okay.
Okay.
So with Amanda, we helped remove a lot of resistance and then we did a lot of identity work with her, right? Because when you're in certain circumstances that don't match the dream or the outcome that you want to be in, you let it affect your identity. You think, well, this is who I am because this is what my world looks like. Where we have to elevate our identity first to change our external reality, right? So we did a lot of identity work with Amanda and she stepped into it so beautifully. She stepped into the self-compassion so beautifully and the fierce self-compassion, which is like this yang version of self-compassion, which is the devotional discipline, the sacred preparation. It's like the kind but firm father inside of
I'm
us
a
that we
I'm a
need to have.
badass. I'm a badass. I
Yeah.
can do this. I am
Yes.
in control of it all. I got you. I
Yeah,
got you.
yeah, exactly. And so she ended up manifesting. So I should say she is a couture designer. Okay, Amanda is a couture designer. She specializes in weddings, but she also does evening wear,
What's that? A couture designer?
dresses.
Oh,
She's a
you're
dress
speaking to a
designer.
man here. I don't know what that is.
Yes, okay. So it's custom, like, made to measure dresses.
Okay.
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 Designer dresses. And she manifested a spot at Paris Fashion Week. She's from Canada, Toronto, which is also where I'm from. And she got herself to Paris. And she did it. And she had her line walk in Paris Fashion Week. And she had an incredible experience. She met all sorts of other designers. And it was so cool to see and to watch. And now she's back to work and she is curating a really awesome fashion show experience, like a luxury fashion show experience this June in Toronto. And I actually have the honor of being the MC of it. So I'm really
Nice.
excited about that. Yeah, she's making me a couture dress, which I'm very excited to represent, to wear. And it's my favorite story. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I love the identity part. That hit home for me because I definitely had this like what people saw from me from the outside was completely different than what I was seeing of myself on the inside. Where from the
Hmm.
outside with the YouTube channel and in my small little niche industry of public adjusting, I could walk into a room of a public adjuster conference or something like that, and everybody knows who I am in this industry. I'm like anytime when you become a public adjuster, the first thing you do is obviously YouTube how to do it, and people binge my show. Like I'm one of the only shows
Awesome.
that there are. So when I go to a roofing conference or something like that, I don't have to go out of my way to speak to people. They come to me. They're like, thank you so much. But what I had inside that people don't know about, that I've been much more open to it about, was as I was scaling my company and I started, instead of following the replacement ladder, for example, and just doing that like slowly, step by step, replacing yourself little by little, I went off and I just hired a bunch of C-suites and I hired a bunch of managers and I moved up everybody to manager, this and that. And not because it was needed. I only did it because I felt that I wasn't capable of leading. I
Mm.
felt inside that I wasn't capable of
Yeah.
being a good leader and actually like leading the ship. I had to get other people in place to do that for me. And that came out of a lack of just, it was just a lack of confidence. That for me comes from growing up and always being average. And my mom was a guidance counselor. for
Okay.
elementary school kids. So I wasn't like ever, I wasn't ever, what is it, honors? And I was every once in a while, but I wasn't like in the, what is it, in the higher class. I was like always in the middle class. And my mom would always be like, "That's okay. You're average. That's good. Average is good." And the C, I would get a C. That's okay. C is right in the middle. So like that's okay to do. And everything for me growing up was just like, oh, well, I'm not great. I'm not bad. I'm just like right in the middle. And that kind of just like stuck inside of me for very, very long until I was asked to be in leadership position after leadership position, then owning my own company and so on and so forth, and still thinking inside that I was just like, yeah, sort of like middle of the pack. And also being, I think like a blind humility of, I'm not going to say I'm great because that's
Oh
more of like
yeah.
that's like a cockiness, like an ego thing.
Right. Yes.
That I got that really confused as well until I finally like just started becoming much more self-aware of the fact that no, it's okay to think that you're great. It's okay to know
Yeah.
that you're great. You are human. We're all great at the end of the day. We're all
Right.
capable of so many amazing things.
Yes, absolutely. I remember when I would hear people like talk positively about themselves, I would get uncomfortable because I never wanted to speak highly of myself. I always felt that it was like, you're not allowed to do that, right? And now I'm so the opposite. I'm like, I'm hilarious.
Yeah.
I'm hot. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I'm so fun,
Yeah.
because why not? Your relationship with yourself and your relationship to something greater than you, which is still your relationship to self, right? Whether you want to call it God, universe, source, whatever, those two things underpin all of your manifestations. So, your relationship with yourself is the most important aspect of your life, period, full stop.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you don't believe in yourself, you can't manifest great things if you don't ultimately believe in yourself or if you're afraid of it. Fear of success was another one. That's a big one for me too. Not
Yeah,
anymore, but
because
it was.
people are always like, why would I be afraid to succeed? Well, what do you feel like you're going to have to give up? Or who do you feel like you're going to become if you're successful? Those are
And
some really
all
important questions.
and they're just make believe thoughts. Like for me, it was always success meant more responsibility. And I got over this one quick, but back in the day when I first became an entrepreneur and I started going to different conferences, I used to think that successful rich people were just evil people.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a lot of that programming for sure. Yeah. Or, my family will hate me, or my family will be jealous of me, or I will be a bad parent because I won't be around as much. Like, there's just so many stories running there that you got to look at.
And they're all make believe.
Yeah, because you get to choose who you are.
Exactly. You mentioned something that I found interesting that I'd like for you to touch on a little bit. Resistance is the killer of manifestation.
Hmm.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if you think about a river and you think about trying to paddle upstream, you're not really going to get too far, are you? Right? So, Abraham Hicks always says, and Abraham Hicks is, these awesome, manifestation. It's a woman who channels a sort of higher power or something. We'll just put it that way. And that's kind of woo-woo, but if you listen to it, you're like, this is good advice.
I'm gonna get
Uh,
it.
yeah, the YouTube videos are great. They're just like these 15-minute clips. But anyways, they say nothing you want is upstream. So I always just envision myself with my hands clenched around these oars, like, trying to paddle. And anytime I feel like I'm in that energy, I clench my fists and then I open them and I exhale and I go, okay, like nothing I want is actually upstream. So how can I address the resistance that I am encountering? So whether that be perfectionism, whether that be my nervous system, whether that be something I'm doing in my behavior, self-sabotage, whatever, I look at all these different areas of resistance. It could be a lack of boundaries. Um, I look at it and I go, okay, well, how can I relieve this resistance? What do I need? That is the most self-compassionate question that you can possibly ask yourself. What do I need? And understanding what your needs are is a skill. The majority of people cannot tell you what they need. I tell my clients, go Google a list of human needs. Go Google it and see how you doing on that list. How you doing? And getting familiar with being able to actually verbalize your needs is so huge. So when you're in resistance, go into a self-compassion practice. So there's one that was popularized by Dr. Tara Brach, and it's RAIN, RAIN. Uh, R stands for recognize. So first you need to be able to have that mindfulness to recognize what you're experiencing, what is the emotion, name it to tame it, right? And then A is allow. So allow or even acknowledge, okay? We don't want to resist. Again, we don't want to deny. We don't want to sweep it under the rug. And then I is investigate. So, where's this coming from? What's the story underneath this? What's the source of it? Maybe it's something in your environment, a condition, whatever. And then N is nurture, which is needs, right? What do I need? And if you can go through that little practice right there, you will shift out of resistance so quickly.
What'd you say? Google search the need. What is it? The human needs?
Human needs, yeah, just a list of human needs.
Let's see. We've got substance, protection, affection, understanding, participation, leisure, creation, identity, and freedom.
Those are some good ones. Yeah.
Those are some good ones. Oh, there's a whole list here.
Oh, there's a lot.
Self-respect,
Yeah.
achievement, exercise, oxygen, shelter, water, sleep, food, play, nature, companionship, confidence. So
Mm-hmm.
you think that when somebody is, again, resistance is the killer of manifestation. When you're trying to manifest something and you feel some kind of resistance, you should figure out exactly what is it that this manifestation or this thing that you want, how does it apply to an actual need that you desire?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because every manifestation we're going towards, really, it's about how we think we're going to feel when we get it,
Mm.
right? That's what we're looking for. We think that when we have X, Y, or Z, we're going to finally feel how we want to feel. So if you can look at that feeling, which really comes back to kind of a need,
And
right?
get it now.
Get it now. Meet if the more that you can meet your needs right now, the more you're going to feel abundant. The more you're going to be approaching your manifestations from a place of wholeness instead of scarcity and lack.
I like that. That's good. And this list of needs is that's a great exercise to do.
For sure.
List
Yeah.
of human needs,
So,
self-respect, learning,
yeah.
achievement, exercise, literature, meditation. That's awesome.
Most people are very disconnected from their own needs.
I could imagine.
Yeah.
You have a priorities and impact framework that focuses on high leverage tasks. Let's get into entrepreneurs, if you don't mind, a little bit in business. That's kind of who the audience is for the most part.
Yes.
How should entrepreneurs identify the few activities that actually move the needle?
This is gonna be really simple.
Okay.
Okay. What are your top three priorities? Okay.
That's it.
What are your top three priorities? And then what are the two most impactful needle moving tasks that you can do towards that priority?
Got it.
Okay. So that is it's extremely simple, but that's the point, right? And I do this in different areas of my life too. So if it's like, this area of my business, I'll go, what are my priorities and impact for this area? If it's my personal life, I'll do priorities and impact for that. Sometimes I'll do it for the week. Sometimes I'll sit and do it for the day. Sometimes I will revisit it in the day and I'm like, okay, I do it on a notepad. I keep it right in front of me for the day that I'm like, okay, these are my non-negotiable tasks that absolutely are the most needle moving tasks. And I think that there's another one called the Pomodoro, something like that technique, which is kind of similar. But it's like for 30 minutes, focus on this one and write down six tasks. So it's sort of similar to that, but I like to just complete the task. So I know when I look at my list, I go, okay, this one stands out to me as the most needle moving task. So I'm going to do that one first. And then I go through the rest. And I sometimes will tell myself, these are my six tasks. If I finish these in the week, I'm going to be really happy. And some of them will have subtasks, of course. It depends. But then for the day, I'll go, okay, these are my priorities and impact subtasks that I'm focused on for the day. And if I complete just these, then I'm going to be really satisfied with what I've done. And I'll know that I've moved myself towards the goal.
And how about if you don't? No big deal.
Yeah, that's another thing too. Like,
Don't beat
you know,
yourself up about it.
yeah, that's where the Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown, that book, I call it my Bible because that's, that's what it says at the very beginning. It's no matter what you accomplish in a day, you are still worthy. Whatever you do or you don't do, no matter what gets done and how much is left undone, I'm enough. It's going to bed at night thinking I'm imperfect and vulnerable and sometimes afraid, but that doesn't change the truth that I'm also brave and worthy of love and belonging.
Love that.
Yeah, I keep it on my desk.
You have recommended me some books that I have never read before, which is awesome.
Yay.
So you talk about focus on embodiment basically and just like really living in the in that place.
hmm
Um, but you also like how do you think focus on embodiment like rather than strategy? So we talked about, focusing on the actual tasks that you're supposed to complete in a day, but that's also kind of like we also try to want to get away from just like focusing too hard on those tasks as well. Wouldn't you agree? So
For
like
sure.
how is focusing on embodiment and just the overall grand scheme of thing actually more important than focusing on the strategy and on the tasks and on the daily things and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, let me put two things together that we've already covered to make this clear to you, everyone. Um, so when we were talking about two different people sitting side by side and interpreting, everything completely differently because of who they're being, essentially, right? If we take that and we apply that to action, it's the exact same thing. So two people could do the exact same tasks in a day and it would turn out differently for both of them based on how they approached those tasks, right? So if you're going in, you're writing some copy, you're having some conversations with people, you're getting in the DMs doing sales, you're creating content, doing a live, whatever, right? If you're showing up as the person who feels like, yeah, I'm, can I swear? Yeah, I am that bitch,
There you go. Say it. Say it.
If you're
I
showing
use
up as
badass. I don't know why. Badass is what positive. I'm a badass. That's what I always
Yeah.
say.
Well, I mean, for me, for you, yeah, it's
Yes.
badass. Um, and you're being, doubtful Debbie over here, showing
Mhm.
up doing the same tasks, you're not going to get the same results. You're not. So you have to be the person first. I actually just did an Instagram post on this the other day. Is that who you're being is always more important than what you're doing. And that doesn't mean what you're doing is not important too,
I
but
love that. I love that.
it's doing things in a certain way. I can't
I
remember who
love
said
that.
that, whether it was like Wallace D. Waddles or one of those old-timey guys that wrote one of the really great,
I love
manifestation
that.
books. But
I love that because it's taken me way too long to really actually embody that. It's always been the to-dos and the tasks and the things and like we started the show was what can I do right now? What can I do right
yeah,
now? I have to do
yeah,
something right now. And it's just so much more about the overall 30,000 foot view. It's just honestly just so much more important than anything else where
yeah.
things are still getting and I have assistants and admins, that help with the daily stuff. And it's just let them go, let them do. And I need to continue as the entrepreneur, as a business owner, to just focus on ultimately the 30,000 foot view. But
Yes.
when you have all these books and you have all these things and even some of our trainings that we have with Dan and stuff like that, where it's like, make sure that this SOP and process and stuff like that are like all these things that you have to ultimately incorporate into it. I think it's important to just like understand that yes, it has to be done. Find a way to delegate that, which is obviously very important, but don't get so like caught up in the worry of it being so important that it needs to be done like right now. Like, okay, it needs to get done. It will get done. Don't worry about it. Like, just allow sometimes Sometimes, like I've gotten more into a place to just sort of allow the universe to eventually have it get done when it gets done and don't
Yes.
get all crazy about it.
Yeah, that's like the I talk a lot about forcing energy, and you can feel it in your body when you know you're trying to force something,
Mhm.
right? And there's a difference between completing the tasks and staying diligent and doing your non-negotiables and all of that stuff and feeling that, there's something about whatever I'm doing here that it just doesn't seem to be like going. It doesn't seem to be flowing. And that's when we need to just take a step back and kind of reevaluate things and, get into a good headspace so we can see clearly and that we can have good focus and we can take that, 30,000-foot view and be able to actually look at everything clearly.
So I downloaded your free guide. I did join your group as well. Like I put my email in and stuff like that.
Okay.
I'd like to, and the reason why I'm getting to is I want to get into the how. Let's
Okay.
let's really like let's put the bow on top here. What's the how?
Mhm.
Because I saw, and you mentioned non-negotiables. I saw that you have non-negotiables that people can choose from on what they want to sort of do. So what's the how, and what are the non-negotiables that you feel that if people were to incorporate in their lives, or what's the list? However you want to answer the question. Mainly
Sure.
the question is what's the how? How can people really actually start living in this space so that they could feel better about themselves and actually move forward in the direction that they want to move towards?
Yeah, so we mentioned earlier my framework that I call Manifest OS. And Manifest OS is really just 5 questions that you need to ask yourself. Because I sat down however many years ago when I created my first manifestation program and I went, what are the steps that I've used to get where I am now? And I sat there and I said, they weren't steps. They were questions I had to answer. So these 5 questions, they're going to sound again real simple, but you can dig into these questions over and over and over and over, and you'll never be done. Okay. So the questions are, who are you? They're in the guide. They're in the meat
Oh, I
guide.
know. I read them all. I read the whole thing.
Meat is manifest everything actionably and
That's what I
tangibly.
want. I actually had that question. I'm like, what is meat? Because I don't think you have it in your guide, Millie.
It's it should be on the cover. It should be on the cover.
Oh, it's got
Uh,
it. Okay, manifest everything actionably. I didn't look at the cover part. Yeah, because then when it
yeah.
gets to page 2, you have it all like down here, and I was expecting the. All right, sorry. Go ahead. I'm
No,
sorry to
no
interrupt.
worries. Yeah. So the whole thing is like it's a little clever. It's a manifestation practice you can sink your teeth into. That's like the whole thing, right? And it's like me with the burger, which I really found entertaining. But anyway, so yeah, their 5 questions are: who are you? What do you want? What's getting in the way? What do you need to do? And what to do when I get off track, or what do I need to do if I get off track? So, with these questions, I mean, obviously, you can spend all sorts of time digging into each of them. What I've done with the questions is create a whole framework on how to dive into the question. And that's what I do inside of my course, Manifest on Autopilot. Is I walk you through all of that, as well as, the science behind the neuroscience, the nervous system regulation pieces, all of those other things that contribute to the success of you going through this process. And you can do it over and over again at every new level. You can do it to gain more clarity when you're at a new phase. Because sometimes we start manifesting something and then we get into this kind of fuzzy, crunchy spot where I'm like, is this really what I want? Is this how I wanted it to be? And you got to recalibrate, right? So going through the questions, I'll take you through a little bit of what I would lead somebody through inside of the course is, who are you? Wow, that's a big question, right?
Yeah.
So one thing you can do to dive into your identity is go take a values assessment online. Really helpful.
A values assessment.
Yeah. Yeah.
I never even knew that existed.
Yeah. So a lot of people don't know what their values are.
I mean, you got to sit down and think about it, though. I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't know that there was an assessment that you can take. When I created the core values for the company, it is funny you say that though, because my original core values, when I was still kind of just a mess and I'm scaling the company and I read traction and I need to have core values because this is what you do.
Yes.
I've got a new set of core values that I came up with because those core values weren't really where it needed to
Yeah.
be.
So in neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, if you've ever heard of it, your values are actually the second most powerful subconscious driver of behavior. Okay.
Interesting.
So if you're clear on your values, then you know who you are. And then you're going to be manifesting from a deeper place of integrity as well. So your why is going to match up with your what. And then that's just going to, make everything fit together so much better. And then again, that's like that subconscious aspect of it. So if your values actually don't align with your goal, you're never going to achieve that goal. Because even if it's a lie, even if it's a story, right? That limiting belief or whatever, that's going to lead to all sorts of limiting decisions that prevent you from achieving the goal. So if you know your values and then you start looking at your limiting beliefs and you understand, well, why don't I feel like I can do this? Or why am I holding myself back? Or what are the self-sabotaging things I'm doing because of that story? Because the story makes it doesn't align with my values, right? Makes the goal not align with my values. So if you can address that, or you can look at your values and go, are these really my values? You can
Mhm.
change your values. It is possible for sure. Because you start to investigate, well, what does this value mean for my life?
I love it.
That's a big one. That's a big one. And then with the question of what do you want, that the identity informs the desire so much, right? And then there's a permission issue oftentimes. It's like, am I allowed to want that much? And you don't unlock your imagination because it's funny because imagining, like, there is really no risk to imagining, technically. It's just in
Right.
your head, right? It's free. Dreaming is free. But people don't allow themselves to do it because they think there is a risk of what if I can't accomplish that? What if, that's, too wild and too selfish and there's all of this stuff so they just shut down that part of their brain and they don't even let themselves set that massive goal because it's like, well, why would I set such a massive goal when I have no idea how I could achieve that. That's not for someone like me, blah 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 blah. But we know that when we set massive goals, we're going to achieve more, period. Right? From psychology, all of this, the studies of sports, like anything and everything. The people who set the biggest goals, even if they don't meet them,
Right. Well, it's not the goal that you set, it's the person you become on your way there.
exactly. And it's the subconscious act of trying to figure out how. And it unlocks so much within you of potential and creativity that you never would have unlocked by setting smaller, more reasonable goals.
I love it. I love it. Keep going.
Okay. And then what's getting in the way? This is the resistance piece, right? So this is some self-honesty, really taking inventory of your behaviors, of like Dan's, you look at your calendar,
Yep.
right? That says a lot. Am I actually taking the actions that support the goal that I say that I'm working towards? Am I actually being the person that would have achieved something like that? So you look at that, and I like lay out a bunch of different areas that are most common for people to get stuck in resistance, which I've already kind of gone into. A few of those, like perfectionism, is a huge one. Lack of boundaries, human things, right? And then it's what do I need to do? Once we address the resistance, we release the resistance. It's like, okay, so what are the actions? And is it super highly strategic? Do we fit ourselves into a box and use all these checklists? Do we have inspired action where we're led by intuition? Like, how do we find the balance of all of that, right? And that's an individual thing, the amount of strategy versus the amount of, intuition that you're going off of, like, let's say, like masculine versus feminine, let's put it kind of that way. And with that, it's going to depend on the personality, I think. And then it also has to come back to that radical self-honesty. It's like, are you avoiding strategy? because you're worried that it's going to feel too rigid for you and you feel like you're not going to actually be able to keep it up. So it's just actually a limiting belief issue, confidence issue, self-trust issue. Or does that actually box you in and make you too actually mentally too rigid and you lose all your authenticity and creativity? You need to get to know yourself, which comes back to question one of who are you,
Who are you?
right? And then
Very
what to do
interesting.
if you get off track, which is going to be kind of a contingency plan for yourself of like, is my life supporting me? Is my life supporting do I have the right people in my life to help me see myself and remember who I am when I'm in those moments of self-doubt, or resistance, and how do I process big emotions when life events happen, grief and failure, shame, heartbreak, loss. How do I get back up and get back on track when all of that happens? Do I have the things in place for myself? Do I have the emotional capacities, like the emotional intelligence and leadership, self-leadership skills and all of that?
Sometimes you think you do, and then the shit hits the fan, then you realize for at least a brief moment you don't.
Yeah. 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 And then that's just becoming your next level, becoming more of who you're meant to be in those
Are you
moments.
are you in the fitness program too by any chance?
I'm not, but I'm in my own
Yeah, I
fitness
gotcha.
program.
He's got a mindset part in the fitness program, and I asked a question about getting off track because of
Hmm.
what I was going through with my mom, and he lit me up.
I'm sure. Those are
He's
the moments you need it even more.
he's like he's like you know better. You know better.
Mm.
Awesome. Millie, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, I think it's fantastic what you're doing. Anything that really just making sure that we are focusing on in what I think is the most important part of the entire being here, which is just like what's going on in between your ears,
Mm.
which is that's really where you are. I think that's fantastic. I'd like for you to give one final piece of advice to business owners looking to really just scale their impact without losing themselves in the process.
Get my meat guide. It's
Ah,
free. No, but like
it's a pretty good
honestly,
guide. I'm not gonna lie.
the process, like it's so powerful. I go through it myself all the time of it's a recalibration. And another thing too, which is not necessarily in the meat guide there, but what I do for myself is I just look for the evidence. And I don't need the pr I call it you look for the evidence, not the proof, right? Because you don't need the proof. You just need to seek out those little bits of evidence. And what I do for myself is the my track record and the self-trust that I've built. It's like, well, look what you've done already. Or because of what I do, I go back and listen to things that I've recorded, like my old podcast episodes or, reels and things like that. And I'm like, listen to your own words. Listen to what you're saying. And I go back to times where I've done great things. And I look to that version of myself. And I also look to the future version of myself. I'm like, what would she say to me today, right now? What's the advice? What strategy? What instruction? And that takes getting a little bit quiet with yourself, but you really do have all the answers inside of you. Sometimes you just need the right people around you to help you access those answers, I'd say, on
So
a regular basis.
Dan Sullivan calls it the gap in the gain.
Yes, I
Um,
just did a lesson on this like
did
a
you?
week ago in my coaching program.
Yeah, so the gap is basically there's a horizon, like in the ocean, you see a horizon, and the closer you get to the horizon, or as you continue to go towards the horizon just keeps
Yes,
going, like it's never
yeah,
ending,
moving
and
goalposts.
that's where you are. You are in the boat, and the horizon is where you want to be. But no matter what you accomplish and what you're doing as an entrepreneur, especially, you're always looking to get more and more and more, where
Exactly.
you need to stay away mentally from that gap. You should still have the horizon there, but mentally you need to stay away from the gap because what's in between there is just stress, anxiety, what do I have to
Never
do,
measuring up.
to-dos, tasks, all these things where what you need to be is in the gain which is everything that you've accomplished up to where you are now on that
Yes.
boat. And that actually
Yeah.
makes you feel good. It makes you feel
Yes.
strong, powerful, confident, and it lets you know that you could really accomplish some amazing
That's
things.
totally it. Yeah. Yeah. 10x is easier than 2x. That book has a good section about the gap and the gain, because it's Dan Sullivan and I forget the other author at this moment, but that's what they talk about. And then that's the thing that I spoke about earlier with you about setting these crazy big goals, because it actually does become easier because you're not focusing on working harder. You're thinking about expanding the vision of, what's possible and having that inspire you, not stress you out, right?
I love it. I
It's
love
like
it.
letting the horizon be beautiful instead of I just got to get there.
What's yours?
What do
What's
you,
your big, hairy,
what's
audacious goal?
what's my horizon? Millions of I'm relaunching my podcast episode, so millions of downloads. When I write my book, it'll be millions of books sold, millions of lives touched, millions of, followers, whatever, millions of dollars, just a milli, a milli, a milli.
A milli. Um, Mine is he doesn't know it yet. But I'm gonna speak on stage with Dan.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's gonna
Okay.
happen.
Yeah.
I know I've got it to do it. You know, I know my show's
Yes.
growing. Thanks to the group. I'm getting a lot of really great guests. I've got
That's
the studio
awesome.
now that we've got some in-person stuff, and I just feel in my flow. When I'm in a podcast and when I'm doing my solo show and I'm talking
Yeah.
about whatever it is I'm talking about with business, I feel like in a flow where I love the entire process from beginning to end, the prepping, the during, the result. I've never done anything like the social media stuff on YouTube where I've really just I enjoy the entire process from beginning to end. And I'm just going to keep like letting that thing roll and expand. And I'm going to speak on stage with Dan. He doesn't know it yet. I haven't told him that yet. I haven't told him yet, but I'm going to tell him eventually.
Well, I think he might get wind of it somehow.
Probably. Well, Millie, thank you so much for coming on. You're more than welcome to just tell us how people can find you and some of the things that you're offering. We are going to leave the free guide for sure in the description below and all of your contact information. So you could close off with something like that, or you could just close off with a
Yeah.
word of advice and word of wisdom, whatever it is that you'd like to do.
Yeah, come on over and find me on Instagram. I do, my main, client that I speak to is female, but that shouldn't stop you from
For
gaining
sure.
something from, coming over. It's Milli Fox, Millifox. There's no E, it's no Y, but it's a milli. You know what I mean? So come find me on Instagram. You can DM me the word menu. And I have this really cool little like automated menu that pops up with all of my latest things through ManyChat. It's like I've never seen anybody else do it. This is
Nice. I like it.
very nice. So you can do that because then it'll always be up to date. But right now I do have the meat guide, which is like a 20 some page workbook you can download. And I've got a few other cool things like a cheat sheet on the same sort of process, which is just a one pager to have on hand. And yeah, I in terms of offering, I've got my Manifest on Autopilot course, and then I've got a coaching program, which is for female entrepreneurs for the most part. So I've got that. I call it Manifestation Baddie.
I like it.
And that's what I'm rolling with right now. And in the works, I am actually creating a manifestation coaching certification because I want to change the way that manifestation is taught. And I think the best way to do that is to train coaches in my method.
I love it. I love it. Millie, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Vince.
And I love how you say the word process.
Don't know if I said it weird.
It's just Canadian. That's all.
Oh, okay.
All right, Millie. Thank
Thank
you.
you.